Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is the meaning of victory and what is a win. Everything changed on April 13th. Almost no analysts correctly predicted what would happen. They all knew that Iran would attack Israel, but almost no one predicted that Iran would directly attack Israel. Almost no one predicted that over 330 ballistic missiles, drones, and smart bombs or cruise missiles would be careening toward the Jewish state. This Iranian attack on Israel was a watershed. No more reliance on proxies and plausible deniability. By striking Israel directly, Iran is hoping to gain the support of the Muslim world. And in part, the plan worked. There were celebrations in Gaza and throughout Iran. There were even celebrations in the United States. When told that Iran was attacking Israel, crowds in Chicago cheered. Iran is also hoping to galvanize support and create a united front against Israel, the United States, and the West as a whole. They fervently believe that Iran, and only Iran, has the strength to successfully attack and defeat Israel, the United States of America also. And so, this attack changed the rules of the game. There should be no doubt in anyone's mind, or calculus, that April 13th and October 7th are integrally linked. Linked not just because Iran sponsors Hamas, but because Iranian guidance and planning with Hamas too attacked Israel. And then Iran followed suit by joining in and supporting that battle. The most critical question for every analyst now is this: what constitutes victory? Is it a question being asked in Israel? Of course. Throughout the United States? Of course. In Iran and capital cities around the world? Of course. According to reports, after the prolonged aerial attack on Israel, United States President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke by phone. Biden's agenda was to cool the flames and urge Netanyahu not to retaliate. He's reported to have told Bibi to, quote, take the win. The point the United States was trying to make is that Israel, together with the coalition led by the United States, successfully intercepted 99% of the incoming armaments. By all standards, that is, and in and of itself, a historic moment in military history. An air defense system successfully repelling 330 plus attacks in one extended barrage is indeed a successful defense, the magnitude of which is indeed historic. The problem with Biden's message is the terminology. President Joe Biden should know better. A successful defense is not a win. Just because Iran did not score a win does not mean, by any stretch of imagination, it's a win for Israel. Israel did not lose, but they certainly did not win. The only way to win can be attributed to one side is if the other side, in this case Iran, suffers a loss. Iran did not suffer a loss at all. Iran emerged unscathed. Thankfully, of course, so did Israel. But that's not where it ends. Quite obviously, the danger of a larger regional conflict looms large. And that's why Israel's response, and rest assured, Israel will have a response, must be very calculated and very precise. It is implausible to even imagine that over 330 rockets are launched at any other country in the world, and that country does not respond. Think of the United States, the United Kingdom, France, any country. Not an Iran missile shot by mistake, but over 330 drones missiles deliberately targeting your country, and there's no response? Impossible. Israel's response may not be immediate, and I don't think it will be. Jerusalem has time to prepare a response to make certain that the targets they hit are targets within the ruling regime of Iran, not the people of Iran. Lecturing Israel and advising the Jewish state on the nature of an appropriate response, as the United States is doing, is patronizing and the height of arrogance. Israel will try to accommodate the wishes of the United States president. There's no question about it. But Israel will be crafting a response to Iran that transmits an unmistakable message. And the message is that neither Iran nor Hamas, nor any other country or entity can attack Israel with impunity. It is one of the most important messages that Israel is sending in their war against Hamas. Israel's war is not about damage and destruction. It's not about revenge. Their war against Hamas is about sending a message that brutally murdering, raping, and burning Jews comes with a price. Israel does not turn the other cheek. It's about making certain that an atrocity like October 7th never happens again. It's one of the international rules governing the self-defense responses of every nation in international law. You are permitted to hit back in response to the point which the attacker will not strike again. For Israel, making certain that Hamas is no longer a political or military power is essential. For Israel, the return of the hostages, dead and alive, is critical. For Israel, these are absolute goals. Partial success is not possible. Hamas cannot be part of the future of Gaza. Hamas cannot be allowed to rebuild their terror network and once again murder Jews. So too with Iran. If Iran was allowed to attack Israel with impunity, Israel will continue to be Iran's target. Israel already has a list of targets in Iran. The list includes physical plants, infrastructure, leadership, and cyber targets. Wait and watch. Iran will see very soon just how capable Israel is in their response. So sorry, Joe, not this time. Coming up next, points of view. First up is a column from Ynet. This column is written by Ron Ben-Ishai. It was written well before the direct Iranian attack on Israel. In this column, Ben-Ishai analyzes whether Iran would attack and what they would attack, and he laid out Iran's goals. Ben-Ishai was correct in so many ways, just not in the direct attack part of his analysis. But he is not alone. Almost no one, as I said earlier, was correct on that issue. This column was posted on Ynet on April 4th, 9 days, about a week before the Iranian direct attack on Israel. From his descriptions, you can see and understand why Israel was so successful at intercepting 99% of the rockets, missiles, and drones launched at the Jewish state. The column is still very valid. It's entitled, Iran Wants to Humiliate Israel, Not Start a Regional War. It's subtitled, Analysis. Iranian regime leaders will try to show Israel and the world they aren't as weak as the strike in Damascus made them look, but will most likely hold back from an all-out attack. This is how Ron Ben-Ishai begins. Fearing an Iranian retaliation over the airstrike in Damascus, the IDF has bolstered reserve units, and the IDF Military Intelligence Directorate warned that, and I'm quoting, the worst may be yet to come, unquote. This led IDF spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari to clarify that there is no change in the IDF Homefront Command's guidelines following a public panic on the matter. This is what Ron Ben-Ishai expected to happen and why. So he describes it, and he describes it very well. In reality, it came true. He continues, it can be estimated the Iranians haven't fully formulated a plan for an attack yet and are exploring options. It can also be strongly believed that they are interested in pursuing limited action, which won't lead to a regional war, but will severely hurt the Israeli public and undermine security forces. The main issue from Iran's point of view is to enable the Ayatollah's regime to show the Iranian public that they have avenged the humiliating assassinations of their commanders, ones that presented Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei and the IRGC under his direct command as weak and powerless. Ron Ben-Ishai now lays out what he thinks will happen and the dangers and the risks. He continues in his column. The Iranians may try to kill IDF soldiers and commanders on leave or during activity in Israeli territory or the Palestinian territories in a terror attack carried out by locals and for which Iran will hint at responsibility. The IRCG is making a significant effort to deliver advanced military equipment to the West Bank in order to carry out large-scale attacks, and may try to use this infrastructure in its plans. There's also a possibility the Iranians will try to march Shiite militias into an Israeli town in the Golan Heights, close to the northern border. Because of this, the IDF canceled combat soldiers' leave for the weekend. Learning Iranian action patterns, it can be inferred there's a high likelihood they'll attempt an attack on an Israeli embassy abroad, mainly in Arab countries, or on Israeli tourists during Passover. There's also a reasonable possibility that the Iranians will try to carry out a combined kinetic, which is physical harm, and cyber attack. Now Ram Ben Ishai begins his conclusion, explaining that the conclusion is this: the Israeli public and those abroad primarily need to show vigilance and caution for their personal security and worry less about an all-out attack on Israeli territory. This is an excellent piece, even in hindsight. Ram Ben Ishai explained what the expectation was of Iran and their attack so very perfectly. Just missed on the direct attack. Not an all-out attack, just a direct attack. Next up is a very different column. The column was written by Nava Freeberg. Nava's piece was published in the Times of Israel on April 10th, 2024. The column is long, and I have chosen several excerpts to share with you. It's more of a literary piece than a column. It's worthwhile looking at. With creativity, insight, and pathos, Nava actually offers the reader a sliver of what it means to be living in Israel after October 7th. It's not simply life as usual. An important disclaimer I often give: Nava is the daughter of very dear friends. The column is entitled Who We Are, subtitled, With each bit of eternity our enemies hope to destroy, we respond with stronger determination to live. This is how Nava begins. We are mothers, grieving souls, torn away mid-sentence. We are fathers, laying the resemblance in our children underground. We are widows and widowers, left with half ourselves. We are brothers and sisters, changed by pain beyond our age. We are friends, finding photos and words to honor faces locked in memory. We are children no longer believing that monsters don't exist, and parents sorry we said so. We are held hostage in tunnels and bunkers, freedom forgotten, and sunlight a mystery. We are eyes that look to the future, but were forced shut. We are all this and more. Since the 7th of October, we have gathered forces on all fronts, military, political, social. We do this to survive, but our truest aim is not survival. If for the past 3,000 years we sought only to survive, we would have lost far fewer people and most of our identity. Since the inception of our nation, however, more defining than the fact of our survival has been the quality of it. Our unparalleled commitment to safeguarding our inheritance, tradition, and collective memory allows us to not simply remain alive, but to remain who we are, to maintain, however turbulently, a we. And this is how Nava concludes. She quotes Paul Johnson, who brilliantly lays out the purpose of the Jew. This is our mission in our land, to love life as well as live it, to show how deep and beautiful the world's potential is, to reveal the joy in being morally upstanding, truthful, and grateful, to teach children ancient songs in a desert we turn greener every day. Recall the tremendous history behind us of a nation that has made God most angry and most proud, living out the greatest story ever told. We face countless trials and don't expect any breaks. As historian Paul Johnson put it, if the earliest Jews were able to survey with us the history of their progeny, they would find nothing surprising in it. They always knew that Jewish society was appointed to be a pilot project for the entire human race. That Jewish dilemmas, dramas, and catastrophes should be exemplary, larger than life, would seem only natural to them. That Jews should, over the millennia, attract such unparalleled, indeed inexplicable hatred would be regrettable, but only to be expected. Above all, that the Jews should still survive when all those other ancient people were transmuted or vanished into the oubliettes of history, was wholly predictable. How could it be otherwise? Providence decreed it, and the Jews obeyed. For anyone who needs to remember, be it our friends, our enemies, ourselves, this is what we are fighting for. It's not about our survival, but the only reason for it, being who we are. I'm proud to know you, Nava. This is an excellent piece. Thank you so very much. Coming up, commentary through cartoons, where pictures tell the story. I'm going to show you 6 cartoons today. No memes, no headlines today. As I mentioned last week, it's harder and harder to find pro-Israel cartoons. This week was no exception. In this first cartoon, we are presented with the Star of David. Prime Minister Netanyahu is situated in the center of the Star. The Star of David is made up of protesters holding signs. Their signs read, "Quit and step down." There's no doubt that the vast, overwhelming percentage of Israelis want Bibi Netanyahu to be held accountable and accept responsibility, but only after the war is over. That's an important caveat. Only after the war is over. In this next cartoon, Netanyahu is depicted as Napoleon. We see a child who has been stabbed behind him in the back, and all around are Israeli bulldozers. They're pushing the rubble. All around the world, Israel is being depicted as unjustified in their actions in Gaza. This is just another depiction. This next cartoon clearly shows 2 negotiating tables. Hamas is shooting rockets from underneath one, while Israel is hiding the turret of its tank underneath the other. In this next cartoon, we see the destroyed Sheba hospital. Blood is seeping out from the hospital. The message of this cartoonist is obvious. Israel destroyed the hospital and killed innocent civilians inside. A terrible perversion of reality. Now a cartoon that shows 2 spoons flying through the air. On one spoon are the initials WCK, which stands, of course, for World Central Kitchen. That spoon is being shot down by an Israeli spoon, a spoon that looks like a drone. In this final cartoon, Prime Minister is walking a tightrope. The Prime Minister is doing his best not to fall over as he balances between the extremes within his coalition. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. 3 U.S. officials told the Wall Street Journal about half of the ballistic missiles fired by Iran were not launched properly or crashed before reaching their destination. According to the sources, Iran launched between 115 and 130 ballistic missiles during its attack on Israel, and only about half of them were successfully intercepted. The rest failed for technical reasons. According to one of those sources, there is absolutely nothing to the famous capability of Iran's ballistic missiles. Time will tell if the source's analysis is indeed correct, and I certainly hope that they are correct. Speaking to Al Jazeera, a senior U.S. official said that Israel may strike targets deep within Iran in response to the Saturday attack. The source emphasized that Israel's potential response is not meant to escalate tensions, but rather to demonstrate its capabilities to Iran. The source also said Israel has not informed us of any specific date for a possible strike. We continue our efforts to prevent further escalation, but the decision rests with Jerusalem. That is a very important point to make. As Israel braced for an attack from Iran, Hamas informed mediators that they would halve the number of hostages it was willing to release as part of an agreement with Israel. This information comes from senior political sources speaking to Ynet. The terrorist organization, it now appears, now agrees to release fewer than 20 hostages in the first 6 weeks if the deal should go through. IDF announced that restrictions immediately imposed on Israelis in response to the recent Iranian attack directly on Israel have been lifted. Several of Israel's home front command's defensive policies were canceled, including bans on educational activities like school, and the planned Passover holiday camps and restrictions on gatherings. So all of that has been lifted now. The IDF has announced that 2 reserve brigades will be mobilized in the upcoming days for operational duties back in Gaza. According to the IDF, and this is a quote, their enlistment will enhance ongoing efforts and readiness to defend the state of Israel and ensure security of its citizens, unquote. The Russian Federal Security Service, the FSB, said that they have foiled the potential attack on a Moscow synagogue. The service said that a suspect who was in possession of an explosive device, or several devices, resisted arrest and was killed. On the same topic, offering a reward, German police are asking possible witnesses to come forward with information regarding an arson attack on a synagogue in the northern city of Oldenburg last week. Police are offering 5,000 euros, which is $5,364, and have called on the public to submit possible witness accounts through an online portal. Apparently, an unknown person threw an explosive device at the synagogue, causing minor damage. Thankfully, no events were taking place there at the time, and no one was injured. The perpetrator fled. Police said they hoped that photos and videos from security cameras, private images, or car dashboard cameras could help them capture the perpetrator on the way to the incident or back. Several months ago, in October, a Molotov cocktail was thrown at a synagogue in Berlin. The United States has had numerous conversations about the conflict in Sudan with countries in the region, including asking them to encourage Iran not to engage. This information comes to us from the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thompson-Greenfield. According to the ambassador, quote, "We've had numerous discussions with countries in the region, and in those discussions with countries in the region, we've encouraged them to encourage other countries like Iran not to engage." Quoting a senior army source, Reuters has reported that Iranian-made armed drones have helped the army turn the tide of the conflict, halting progress of the Revival Paramilitary Rapid Support Force and regaining territory around the capital of Sudan. The coordinator of government activities in the territories, Major Hassan Alian, reports that there are 600 aid trucks that have stacked up over the last week on the Gaza side of the Keren Shalom crossing border. That humanitarian aid is waiting to be collected and distributed by UN officials. In a post on X, the coordinator wrote, "The content of 600 trucks is waiting to be collected by the UN on the Gaza side of Keren Shalom in a way that prevents the transfer of additional trucks. We extended crossing hours and scaled up our inspection capacities. At UN, do your job. The bottlenecks are not on the Israeli side." He also said that the lack of UN capabilities is actually harming the humanitarian effort led by Israel. In that same vein, Israel's coordinator of government activities in territories, COGAT as it's called, has reported that over a 3-day period, Israel delivered 1,200 aid trucks in the Gaza Strip. According to the statement released by COGAT, as of now, 500 trucks are awaiting in the Gaza side of Keren Shalom crossing for the United Nations employees to unpack them. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. I want to show you an interview with then Prime Minister Golda Meir. In the interview, Prime Minister Meir spoke to Thames TV in 1970 in the aftermath of the hijacking of a Swiss airplane carrying Israelis. Flew up mid-air, 45 people were killed. Golda, as every Israeli called her, explained why Israel exists and how Israel protects itself. Not by attacking innocent people, she says. She is so profound, so insightful, so powerful, so eloquent. It's important to note that Golda was a Labour Prime Minister. She was an ardent socialist and an extreme liberal. It is important to also understand that her perspective was the mainstream Labour political perspective. Times have changed, and political extremes have changed also.
If the world governments do nothing, what will you do?
We'll have to protect ourselves.
How?
We'll see, best way we can. Not attacking innocent victims, innocent passengers. That we don't do.
Could we presume that there might be something like the Beirut raid again? Might Damascus airport go up?
I don't know. I'll tell you honestly, if I did know what we were going to do, I don't think I would tell you.
Prime Minister, after gunmen shot up your plane in Zurich, you launched the massive retaliation raid on Beirut airport, and yet the incidents have gone on. Doesn't this show that a policy of retaliation against governments for the action of guerrillas just doesn't work?
What did we do against the Beirut airport? Was any person hurt? Our boys that went to Beirut, they didn't see to it that all the people that were wandering around at the airport should get out of the way?
But it didn't stop it, did it, Prime Minister? Are you saying that, in fact, you'll have to do something? Maybe somebody will have to get hurt?
No, no. We never go out to hurt anybody that's innocent. Sometimes innocent people are hurt, but that's not our intention.
Yeah, but...
And it's not because we don't do everything possible not to hurt people.
There are people, presumably in the Arab countries, who you would say are not innocent, who might get hurt.
I think our passengers on the Swiss plane, ours and other nationals, were innocent people.
Both sides in the Middle East talk about an imbalance of power. The Arabs say that they need new weaponry to keep up with you. You say that you need new weaponry to keep up with the Arabs. If you get the 50 Phantoms from the Americans, will this in fact correct the imbalance of power in your favor?
It will correct some of the imbalance. President Nasser said only several days ago, it isn't a question that he doesn't have enough planes. He said, we have planes, but I don't have enough pilots. Well, supposing he gets more planes, will he have more pilots of his own? He said that in an interview, I don't remember exactly where to, that it isn't a question of a lack of planes, but he doesn't have enough pilots. Israel has a lack of planes, and he says, has 2 pilots for each plane. And they're good pilots. That's true, thank God for that. But we've never asked, nor can we afford to have plane for plane and tank for tank. That's all nonsense. But you reach a certain point where the imbalance really becomes dangerous.
Is it dangerous at the moment?
It is extremely essential, very vital for us, that this imbalance is corrected.
I'm so impressed by Prime Minister's comments. It seems, however, that the situation has not changed dramatically since 1970. Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS. And I want to wish everyone a happy and kosher Passover.